what's going on? Welcome to another episode of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want to try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. And today, we're going to be looking at the best out-of-bounds discoveries ever made on the classic Mario Brothers games. That includes Mario 1, Mario 2, Mario Brothers 3, and Super Mario World. Full episodes are in the video description, and with that said, let's get going. So before I do anything, I want to talk about all the Piranha Plants in the various games because they've been covered in the past and they all have different things going on with them. So let's take a quick look here. So with Super Mario Brothers, the Piranha Plant is actually just hiding inside the pipe with the animation looping and everything. Talk about full immersion. Now I'm about to break that immersion because when you kill the Piranha Plant, the sprite doesn't simply go away, it actually hides back into the pipe with a portion of it severed and resting above the Piranha Plant stem instead of where it's supposed to be. Here's another little interesting tidbit for you. Whenever you get out of an underground level, Mario is touching the Piranha Plant on his way up out of the pipe, which means there's no hitbox on the Piranha Plant until it leaves the pipe. The Piranha Plant in Super Mario Bros. 3 has different properties. There appears to be something masking that Piranha Plant. This is clearly a hit block that is broken in half, and you might ask yourself, why is this here? Well, this answers all the questions as to why there might be some weird thing instead of Mario himself. See, the NES has two layers. There is a sprite layer and then there's a background layer. And in order for a sprite to be behind the background, it needs to change its properties to behind background. However, in some instances, it needs to do both. And so when you see these weird objects in front of Mario, what's happening here is that this is also a sprite set to behind background. However, with two sprites on the sprite layer, you can have Mario set to a lower priority than this weird block object, causing him to be behind this other sprite. But then that sprite is also behind the background layer, whereas Mario's not, so that any point he's past that block object, it looks like he's in the foreground, which makes it easier for him to look like he's coming out of the pipe. And then in Super Mario World, it's completely immersive, sort of. Okay, I lied. If you get really close to it, it actually does disappear, turns invisible. But now with that said, let's start with Super Mario Bros. 1. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen on this show. Apparently, all the underground bonus areas of Super Mario Bros. Are all interconnected into one map. So breaking the boundaries and going past all of these different areas will show you that it just has another area that's at a later point in the game. Never in my life did I expect to see something so cool in a game so old. But the fun does not end there for Super Mario Bros. It's also an age-old question, where does Mario go when he goes inside the castle? Well, the truth, it's a really cool thing on a technical level. He is behind the castle, so if you remove all the tiles that are the castle, you can see Mario walking in place behind that door frame. But why isn't he moving anywhere? Is it just a funny little looping animation? Not quite, because what is going on here is that there is a legitimate brick block that is right by Mario's feet. The rest of the castle, fake. It's not real. But that one brick block that Mario's walking into, that one is a legitimate block. And I can jump on it, I can walk against it from another side, just to kind of give you a feel for the fact that, yeah, that's real. And what if you go further beyond what levels were supposed to show you? Well, it just turns out that at a certain point the game displays random memory in physical form, causing a glitchy-like world to appear. This is something you would never get to in time because the timer would always run out if you ever could get over the flagpole. But with a cheat code that disables the timer, you can see this now. Also, here's a little funny fact for you. In the large Koopa castles, there is actually still a flag that's supposed to rise up when you complete a level. It's just hidden behind the castle itself. Also, the castle goes on for quite a while. There's a giant castle wall that you would never be able to see. And of course, if you get far enough, like I said before, there's random memory that gets shown in physical form. Now, earlier we looked at the castle, but what about a warp pipe after you beat a level? Does Mario do anything funny? Well, this time around, Mario actually knows to stop in place instead of walking indefinitely. So the little brick block trick here is not in effect. And something I've always wanted to do is see what's past the pipe in the underwater level. And now that we can walk past it, we can see that there's just an ongoing green wall. I mean, I wasn't expecting there to be a whole consistent wall the whole time. It's really neat. And now let's move on to Mario Brothers 2. The big questions that we wanted to ask here was, what's inside that door that you come out of right at the start of the game? And in order to pull that off, I had to mod in a platform underneath the door. Although rest assured, that door has the same exact properties as it would if there were no platform there. And so if we go inside, we can see that it still warps you to the beginning of the game, just higher than where the door is. And similar situation to pretty much the very end of the game, there is a door to the castle as well as 2 door-shaped windows. And so by no clipping through the wall, you can see the functionality of those windows. And funny enough, they place you in the same place as the door, just higher up, which would make perfect sense considering that there are windows hanging above the door that is in the same area that would be the entrance here. Now, this is one of my favorite discoveries on Boundary Break ever. It was not mentioned anywhere, but the throne room in Super Mario Bros. 3 has a lot going on inside of it. The first of which being that there is an entire space behind the throne room that has a specially textured wall. Now, it reuses assets that are already available in the game, but clearly these are placed in such a way that it's deliberately using this pixel map to make a design. Now, the thing that makes this really tough to show on a YouTube channel or whatever is that it can really strain a person's eyes when you look at it and you're moving super fast, so I'm trying to keep things as slow as possible. But I will show you that there is a ceiling to this room, which is the same blocks in the original throne room, but green, and it does stop the player from going any higher. And if you were to go all the way to the end of this room, what you're gonna find is, yet again, just like in the Super Mario Bros. 1 segment we just talked about, the RAM of the game being shown in visual form. But that's not the only thing you can find in this room. Just above the throne room is the format for the letters that Princess Peach sends you. And how about that tiny little cutscene when Mario jumps onto the airship? It's one of those things you don't put any thought into, but if you were able to move around freely, you can see that there's still a lot going on here too. The anchor chain is way longer than you might think. And also, I just wanted to show you that moving over to the right will give you a look at the end of the airship. Also, fun little bonus for you. If you were to move around freely while this cutscene's going on, the right side of the wall would instantly kill Mario. This is for 2 reasons. This is because this cinematic actually has the auto scroll functionality attached to it. And the other reason is because Cinematic Mario can just go wherever the hell he wants. And so normally an auto-scroller level would have to push Mario into the death bounds in order for that to happen, whereas Cinematic Mario can simply walk into the death bounds. This one is just a personal dream come true for me when I was a kid. In the pyramid level of the second world, you're only allowed access to the front entrance of the pyramid, but the screen stops scrolling very, very quickly and doesn't really allow you to see much beyond the front door. However, there was a lot more past here, and it's really just cool to see which stone blocks are used and how long it goes on for, and what sort of patterns are formed in the areas that you're not supposed to see. The bonus area, which I was not expecting to be connected, but after covering Super Mario Bros. 1, I guess I should have had some expectation, I guess. And then the fact that it all leads out to the exit area of the level. And then this one is super freaking cool. So, data miners way back in the day have discovered unused assets in Super Mario Bros. 3, one of which being a castle icon on the map screen that was unused. However, in the game, if you were to go all the way to the right on the warp whistle screen and keep going and going and going until once again we get to a screen where all you're seeing is RAM being represented on the screen itself, some of the images that are produced from that RAM ends up being that unused icon. So there you go. There's an unused building here that you can see in-game in Super Mario Bros. 3. Now let's move on to Super Mario World, and the best things that I feel like I found in this game are oftentimes sprites that just have sprite layer priority. So like this Big Boo over here, he has hands and he uses them to hide his face, especially when Mario is looking straight at him. But if I removed the sprites that would normally cover those eyes, you can see that the eyes were always there. Now, in-game, if you waited long enough, you can see him trying to peek over his own hands. But even then, it's still a little bit covered up. So here you go, the eyes in full view. And then here's another example of sprite layer priority where this blue square covers up this Cheep Cheep. And if we were to remove that blue square, we can finally see what's going on with this Cheep Cheep, only to reveal that on one of the last frames of its animation, the Cheep Cheep actually changes color completely to like a pale thing. And then over here with the Lakitu, it becomes very obvious that it's being covered up by the cloud. If we remove that cloud sprite, we can then see that there's an entire body to the Lakitu, which is really cool. And then similarly, there's a Lakitu in this pipe. But what goes on here is very, very strange because he has this body that is fully sprited. But when he throws a Spiny, the animation for that throw is completely disjointed from the body that you never get to see anyway. So I guess it didn't really matter, right? It's just really funny. And then there's these ghost versions of the Lakitu, and they themselves do not have a body. But if you remove that cloud layer, you could still see that there's something there that you weren't supposed to see, which is a bunch of white pixels. And now moving on to the map screen, I wanted to show you what happens when you remove that border border that you normally see in the game, because if you do, you end up seeing how the map just sort of wraps around. What looks like uncharted territory to your left is actually just the edge of the right side of the map screen. Though these smaller areas are way more interesting because they actually share one giant map with all the other small areas. So to the left of Yoshi's Island is Bowser's Castle, and then above that is Star Road. And to the right of Star Road is the Forest of Illusion. But above Star Road and below Bowser's Castle is the Special Stages screen. And what's really cool about looking at it from this screen here is that normally the Special Stage screen is all black with a couple of star twinkles, so probably meant to be in space. But changing the color of the palette will prove to you that instead of being pitch black, it's actually supposed to be the grass map that's used in other areas of the game, as indicated by the weird pattern that you see there. And then here's a piece of trivia that's been well known for a while, but here's a visual representation of it. For whatever reason, the developers decided to spawn in a beetle at the very end of this stage here, but the player would normally never be able to see it because it falls through the map before the player would ever even get a chance to come up to it. This is because it never lands on solid ground, and so because enemies spawn a little bit before you even get onto the screen, this guy falls to the floor immediately. But thanks to the speed and velocity in which we're approaching it, and no clipping as well, we can catch him on the screen just before he dies. And then this is one of those mysteries that I always wanted an answer to, and so I get to share it with all of you. It's, what does the Blarg look like underneath the molten lava? And as it turns out, when he's peeking his eyes up out of the ground, he's not connected to an entire body. It's just his eyes with a little bit of extra red underneath him, making a square shape on the bottom. And then the Blarg itself doesn't have a whole lot going on underneath the lava surface. All the same though, at least now we can see as many pixels of this creature as we possibly can, since it's been kind of mysterious in the first place. And here's one last little interesting thing for Super Mario World. If Mario didn't die immediately on lava, you would see that the lava actually has the same properties as water, which makes you wonder, was there ever anything that they were going to do with lava outside of just kill the player immediately? And why the heck not? Let's talk about Yoshi's Island for a little bit. The first thing I want to show you is what happens to Nepinut after you attack it and it goes underneath the water surface. When you do, Nepinut just sort of collapses into itself, and the sprites for the teeth still remain despite the fact that pretty much the rest of his body is just gone now. Also, super interestingly, the Lakitus here that are supposed to come out of the water has a lot more going on with its sprite than the game lets on. You get to see so little of the Lakitu, but removing this layer here will show you that there's a surface of water that the Lakitu is attached to, and he's supposed to be using a snorkel that sticks out of the water, but you don't get to see that. Also, when you defeat the Lakitu, you can see its entire body, including its feet. I also wanted to show you that you can remove a layer on the map screen to reveal much more of the map. On every single screen, there's a little bit of extra detail that you would normally never get to see. It's never anything too exciting, but still, it's a couple of extra trees or a couple extra leaves that, again, you're just not allowed to see as the player. And that's all I got for now. If you want to see some classic Zelda games, I got that on the screen right now. Also, patrons and members do a lot to help this channel, and if you'd like to do the same, I'll leave links to those in the video description as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.